Welcome to the fastest daf in town. Today we'll Masechtas Bava Metzia daf Vav. We are going to begin on Vav Amud Aleph, about 14 lines from the top by the two dots. Boy Rav Zera. So Rav Zera asked the following question: Takva echad bifanenu. So we learned in our Mishnah you have shnai moichs metalis, but now all of a sudden one of them grabs it away from the other person, and it's done in Beis Din. So Maha, what is the din? Does that guy just keep it? So Hechidami, in the Shosik, this is actually question 1. Shnai moichs metalis v'takva echad bifanenu v'harikul biyado koidim shenishbu ma din. So this is the answer. In the Shosik, if the other guy is silent, so then duyele. It's just obvious. He's admitting to the fact that it's not his. He could have said something and he didn't. Now, if he was screaming, then what else could he have done? So, of course, the fact that he grabbed it out of his hands in front of Beis Din doesn't mean anything. The question is, what if originally in Beis Din, the guy who had the thing taken away from him, initially he was quiet, and then afterwards he started shouting. So, mid-ishtik, the fact that he was initially silent, we say that is his admission, so therefore it's already obvious that it wasn't his. Now, let's look what's going on. He's really protesting. Hashdi Goli Milsitz, we can retroactively understand, and it's clear the Haidashasik Mikar, the reason why he was quiet before is because Savar Hakachazulu Rabbana. The Beis Din saw what this guy was doing. He ripped it out of my hands in front of me. So, I was just shocked that he did this. But it's not any form of recognition. So, what's the din? So that is the Gemara's question. So, Amar Rav Nachman Tashma. So we try to bring the Raya in the following way. When do we say these words? Is Shishneim Adukin. This whole case is dafka when both of them are holding on to the talis. Let's say only one of them people is actually holding on to the talis, and this was what happened. So only one person is holding on to it, not his friend. So the din is that the person who doesn't have it in his hand, he has to prove with witnesses that Ataka is his. So Hechidami. If you want to tell me, as it says, that this person just is walking in, holding onto the talis by himself, so Pshita. It's pretty obvious that would be the din. So what's the Chiddush? Maybe it's Taka talking about our situation, that he grabbed it in Beis Din. Initially he was Shosik, and then he was Savach. So in that situation, maybe over here again we see a raya of a mutzmach of a raya, and his shtika initially shows that he admitted. Whoa, hachmai skinan. What's the chiddush over here? What are we talking about? Going to also kaman kid tafisu la tervayu. That they came in front where they were both typhus. V'amrin and luhu, and we said to them zil poloigu. Go and split it up. V'nafgu, and they went out. V'hader asu, and they came back. Ki tafis l'chan minayhu. So one of them now is only one is holding on to it. So hayomer oidiaduyili. The reason why now I'm the only one holding on to it is because he, after we left, admitted that it wasn't his at all. But this other guy, oimer b'demei agarti nihale. No. The truth is, half of it's mine, but I rented out my half to him. The Armin and Lay will say, no, that can't be logical. You, just a few moments ago, accused him of stealing your talis. Now you're renting it out without any witnesses? No. So it must be that it isn't his at all. The E-boy say, alternatively, Kiriktani. Like we said before, they also come in front of us, ki tafis now one of them is holding it. So if that's the case, it's a double pashut. Why would you think? So the other one isn't that he's not holding on to it at all. Ve'idach misrach la saruche. The other one is holding onto its edge. It's like just clinging onto it, but he doesn't have the same tfisa, the same physical holding onto it. Now, even according to Sumchus, who says that when we're in doubt, the din is that we should split it up without a shvua. But here, Moda Sumchus, he'll admit to sircha lav klumhi. The fact that he's holding onto it just by clinging onto it or holding its edges, that is nothing. Okay, so therefore, basically, the case of shasak v'hadat savach is a boidel ifshita. The imtim solemer takva echad b'fanenu moitzin oisem yadai. If you want to hold, because we didn't really establish this, but if you would say, and Rashi says again, the sarchel av klumhi, the in shor shachal v'necha, the dilik in shor shachal v'necha. It's not in front of us, the shore that was shechted. Lo dami nimsa uber b'tzida. It's not comparable to the case of sumchas of the uber b'tzida. Basically, what happened was that there was a question of a parsh and nagachas, a shor shagas a para, and the para had an uber. So, and the question was the animal born before or after the damage? So you have to reimburse also for the fetus that was killed, or maybe it just died on its own before. So in that situation, we have shor shachas v'nech. We see the problem in front of us. Here we don't. So Sumchus would not say that would be cholkin b'lo shvua. Okay, so again, based on our question, even though we don't have this answer, if we want to say that taka, we would take it out of this guy's hand, and moitzin oisim yadai, the Beis Din says we'll still split it. Doesn't matter that you're both holding on to it, and then you ripped it out of the guy's hands in front of the Beis Din, and he's silent, and then he speaks up. So in that situation, Beis Din will still take it out of his hands. So if that's the case, hekdisha in mukadeshes. Certainly, if let's say he did not grab hold of it, it's not work. It will not work because the being makdish something cannot be better than grabbing hold onto it. Okay. So certainly would not be mekudesh. Now, maybe if let's say he does rip it out of the guy's hands in front of Beis Din, he's shasak v'hader savach, and Beis Din will just let the guy keep the whole thing. The question is, let's say according to this, if you would be makdish it without grabbing hold onto it, mahu. What is the din of being makdish it in that situation? Because kivandi amar mar mirasel gavokim esrasel hedidami, so it's commanded takvadami. So if the idea of grabbing hold on to something has a koyach that now you're completely the owner, so when you're makdish it, being makdish it is comparable to being taikif, like grabbing hold on to it. So even though you're makdish it without grabbing hold on to it, but it's the same thing, because words regarding to Gavoa is comparable to a physical action by hedget, and therefore, just like maybe if the imtim solayman, you would say that Beis Din would not take it away from him, so therefore maybe taka could be makdishit below tfisa, below takva. O dilma hashdamia halo takva. No, it's all totally on him actually physically holding on to it to be able to be makdishit. After all, the pasuk says, "Except ish ki akdish is based with kodesh v'gaimer." Ma base Rishuso, I've called Rishuso if we can hide the low Rishuso. Since the other guy is still holding on to half, so then he would not be able to be maktishit. So that's the question. So again, if you hold that takfa, that the guy grabs hold onto it, that we would still take it away from him, then certainly you cannot be maktishit. But let's say that if it's tight, if you grab hold onto it, that we will not take it away from you, which means that there's a koyach in your grabbing, so maybe there's a koyach in you being makdashit, or no, it has to be something which you have. And since it's shlober shuso, it's not physically in your proximity, even though it's true, we say that there's a din of imrasel gvokim israsel hedit, but at the same time, it has to still be in your rishos. So what's the din? So tashma. So we're going to see the following case of Dahi Masusa. There's a story of a Masusa. Rashi says a merchatz. It's a story about a bathhouse, in which we're not even going to get to the maskana of this until tomorrow. But there's a story of a bathhouse. Tahavi minsula betray. There was a quarrel among two people regarding the ownership. Hai omer didihu, v'hai omer didihu. Each of the people said that they had a claim to the ownership of this bathhouse. So kam chad minahu akdisha So one of them went and was makdish it. So this is, again, our trying being a proof whether you can be makdish something when you're not typhus it. So Parshe Mina Rav Chananya Rav Oishya V'Kul Rabbanan. All the rabbis separated themselves. Upon hearing this, they refused to bathe themselves in this merchatz. Why? Must be because you could be makdish it. So we see in a case of when a person is taikif, when he grabs hold on to it, that the din is that if we would not take it away, so therefore it has koyach in that situation. So too, if you're makdish it, you should also have koyach even if you're not typhus or taikif. So therefore, this is a raya. The Yermalei Rabbi Shul Rabba ki azos kamed Rav Chista the kafri. When you go to Chista in this Shem Makam, Rashi says this place, boy mine ask the question. Ki also sur and went to Sur Malei Rabbi Hamnuna Mas Nisanhi. He said that when you go on the road of Sur to go to Kafri, you can ask. And Rav Hamnuna said, "Taka, it's a Mishnah." This answer is a Beferish Mishnah. Where do we see this? Because by Savik B'chayr, says Rashi, going Behemish Yalda. You have an animal that gave birth. Then Yadua im Bichar Kfar im Lo. You don't know if this is the firstborn animal or maybe it gave birth before. Now, Echad B'chor Adam, Echad B'chor Behema doesn't make any difference if we're talking about a person. Well, you can just, what do you mean? How do we not know if there was another person? You can just see the other person. So there could have been a miscarriage, and the question is that miscarriage significant enough that was still constituted as a firstborn? So that's why there's a suffix over there by a person or by an animal, bein taharin, bein tamein. So also, when not just kosher animals, also by a tummy animal, for example, Peter Chamor, so to redeem a donkey, so there's a din pinyin Peter Chamor. So let's say there's a suffix in any of these cases, Hamotzi Mechavero Olav Haraya, says Rashi. Right now in the Havim, our thought process, we think, Im Biyad Yisrael Hain, if this animal is the hand of the Israel, Havi Kohen Moitz Mechavero Olav Haraya. If the Kohen wishes to take these animals, because normally he has a right to these things, but since it's a suffix, the Kohen has to prove. And then here's the key lines of Rashi. The whole sugya is called Takfa Kohen. Let's say the Kohen grabs hold onto the suffix Bechor. So this is again what we're trying to prove. That he was silent originally, and then he starts screaming, Hav Yisrael Moitz Mechavero. So in the Havamina, we think Hamoitz Mechavero is referring to that if Takfa Kohen, then Yisrael, because he was Shosik, even though he was Hadar Savach, he still has to bring a raya. So therefore, again, we see that when it comes to a situation of grabbing hold, there's an element of koyach that there's a koyach that belongs here. V'tanya law, and we learned on this, asurin begizav avoida, that you cannot, because this animal is a suffix, so because it may be kodesh, so therefore you cannot benefit from its shearings and its avoda. So even if, let's say, we're talking about the Yisrael's holding on to it, and the Kohen has to be Moitz Mechavaraya, doesn't mean the Yisrael can do whatever he wants with it. He can't shear it or work with it. Now, we just established that, let's say if the Kohen Taka does grab hold onto it, and the Yisrael is silent and Savach, that Moitz Mechavaraya, that the Yisrael has to prove that in fact it was not Kodesh. So if that's the case, if takvu in moiselas miyado, detani hamos mechabaraya, that's what we said. So v'chilu takvu. So if the Kohen doesn't grab hold onto it, we still see that this animal is asur b'gizav avoda. So why not? Why? It must be that even though if you're not taikif, even if you're not typhus, still it could be kodesh, right? That's soraya. So it is kodesh since the Kohen may seize it. So, and if he would seize it, it would be usher. Its shearings, its avodah would be usher. So too, even though it's not in his rishus, it doesn't make any difference. You can still be makdish it to the point that it's usher b'gizav avodah. So therefore, this is actually a raya that you could be makdish something if you hold takfa koyin that we don't take it away. So then we would see from this situation, the din is that you would that you could be makdish it. So Amalei Rabba Kedushas B'chor Kamrit. You can't bring a raya to a bechor or a suffix bechor. Maybe in a normal circumstance, if a kohen grabs hold on to it, you will take it from him because it's a suffix. This is different because it's a kedusha that comes on its own. Says Rashi. El hacham mishum iser suffix giza kadashim. Kedusha haba mi'aleha shani the im bechor because it's a bechor me'el of kadosh. It just automatically becomes kadosh. The person wasn't makdish it. We're asking, could you be makdish something? Here it's not being makdish. It happens automatically. The equals sfuki mahachi of a gami masusa by the bathhouse. Dein kedusha ba el al piv. The kedusha only comes through one's mouth. Shalzeh, so emolach they feel im tim solemer takva in moitzian. Even if you would hold takva in moitzian, we don't take it away. Maybe still kedusha below takva loy havi hektish. Maybe being makdish it without grabbing hold onto it doesn't work. Dein yachal hektish davar shein b'shuso because it's not in your rishus. So as we said, that was the svara, maybe the other way, because it has to be b'shuso, as the pasuk says, which is interesting. That how can you the other side is not like the pasuk, or it's maybe a different interpretation of the pasuk. But the point is, they can't learn up a bechor. Bechor is automatically kadosh. It's merechem. It's kadosh automatically. Over here by the masusa, here you want to be makdish something which is not kadosh. So if you want to be makdish something, it maybe has to be in your rishos. Okay. So that's the answer. So you said kedusha's bechor kamer loy mimlach takva kaimus miyadav. If you hach assuming is vavoda kedusha ba meleha shiny. Amul Rav Chananya or Rabba Tanya the Messiah loch. So he says, I actually have a statement in which will support you. Hasveikos nichnasun ladir lesaser. So this is going to be again regarding suffix bechoros. If the coin grabs hold on to it, that we will take it out of the coin's hands. Why? Because we're going to see, and it'll explain later on, that this is referring to a suffix pidyon peter chamor. This is referring to the redeeming a donkey. The mafresh olav taleh. That what you did was you separated a sheep, lafuki isura, and that's what you did. He separated a sheep, but he doesn't have to give it to the kohen. V'ul atzmo, he can keep it. Shein tzarich litnu l'kohen. Shemoitz b'chaver l'rai. Because of the case of a suffix pidyon betachamor, we still want you to separate the tleh, but still there's nothing that has to be given over to the kohen because it's a case of suffix. Upidyon says Rashi pidyon betachamor bar asurihu. So he says when it comes to this pidyon, it's within the category of chiyav meiser. Im yeshel kohen yud pitri chamurin. Let's say the kohen has 10 of these donkeys. Shenaflu mabeis avi imam Yisrael, and it fell from his inheritance. Mafresh lehem asar saying, so he should be mafresh 10 sheep. Umasrin, and then separate meiser. The hein shelo, and they're his. Hilchach some opinion petachamor b'yad Yisrael nichnas ladir. You can put it into a pen, im shar taloim, with all the other sheep, lis aser, in order to count as meiser behema. Now, the inafga basiri we poke, if that one could potentially be the one for meiser behema, and that would be fine. So, back in the Gemara. So, asfekos, again, when it comes to suffix pidyon petachamor, now let's say you have 10 of them, and therefore you have 10 taloyim. So, if you choose one of them, it could end up being meiser behema. Now, if you want to tell me that the kohen has so much strength that if you attack a grab hold onto it, he has some zechiyah, and therefore because of that you would not be able to take it away from him. How could you say that this sheep should be able to go into the pen? Right? You'd be pottering from the kohen's money. Says Rashi, Yeshu kohen satzachiyabo. Nimsa im yotza basiri. If this animal comes out 10th, poiter mimayna b'mayna shel kohen. This is really the money of the kohen. So it's proof the kohen has no rights to this. Otherwise, the Israel wouldn't be allowed to use this for meiser behema. Somle abaya, no. Imishum halom or tisaye. Lamar. This is actually not a proof. Why? Because all you had was 9 sheep and this 1 to equal 10. You don't have thousands. You only have 10 exactly. So the manavshach. If in fact the tele is a bar chiyuva, therefore it's part of it, then shaper kamaiser. So then it's good that you included this as meiser behema. Now ilam bar chiyuvahu, let's say because you have no chiyuv to in this case, so tisha lam bar sirininu, you only have 9, so therefore there's no chiyuv meiser behema anyway. So therefore that is the explanation. So all you have is mamish exactly 10. Okay, let's stop here for 1 second. So let's look at question 2. Ha'im safek b'chor nichnas l'dir l'hisaser umahatam. So he says, ein nichnas l'dir l'hisaser. He says, an animal cannot go in when it comes to the safek b'chor. The im hu kadosh b'b'chayra. Because if Yitak is kadosh, ein chalav shem meiser, then it cannot count as meiser behema. Shei kodesh oim rachman of lo shkvar kadosh. The asiri vada im rachman of lo asiri safek. So this is based on what we're saying here, that when it comes to a pidin petach hamor vadai, you cannot use that as meiser behema, because meiser behema, that 10th animal becomes kadosh, which means it wasn't kadosh. Now pidin petach hamor was already kadosh. So therefore, that is the din. So therefore, also safek b'chor is also not nichnas l'dir l'saser for that same reason. But the only reason l'maskana we're saying it's okay that you could use this safek as part of the meiser behema is because mamanavshach you're not going to be chayiv. Because if you told me that you have there is no zechia and therefore it's considered to be like a regular tala, if you will. So therefore you are chayiv in meiser behema. But if not, then you only have 9 anyway. Hadar Mabaya, La Milsi. Abaye retracts and says that this is not the case. La Milsi, the Amri that we said, says Rashi, Devadai Siyatihi, this Lamar. This actually is a very strong proof. The Amri, the Sveka La Bar Sirihi, that this suffix is not, there's no chiyav of meiser. So it is proof that it isn't the Kohanes. Because again, if it was the Kohanes, then you could not possibly pot yourself. So, but he's saying that the Sveka is lava sirihu. Did not. Kafetz echad min ha-minuyin. Let's say the animal jumped back in. Let's say it was already counted. And then somehow jumped back in Latochan Kulam Paturin. We say that all of the animals are going to be potter. If you want to tell me that when it comes to a suffix, it does need meiser behema, so then mamanavshach you should have to still do this, even though the animal jumped back in. Dibar chiyuvahu shaper meiser. If there's a chiyuv, then you're chayiv, and that makes sense. You did meiser behema. The labar chiyuvahu nifr b'minyan haroi. Then the din is we should be potter from what's called minyan haroi. Says Rashi, what is that? Hayulo yud teloyim. Let's say you had 10 animals. Umana chamish, you counted 5. Umeis echad min she'enon minuyin. And then one of them, which wasn't counted yet, died. Ha-minuyin paturin. The ones that pass through are pater. Here when an animal dies. So to here, he fulfilled the mitzvah, since if it's the animal that was counted, then it's pater anyway. So from this 10, it isn't from the animal that jumped back in. We don't know the reality. Here, he's chayiv and did well. That's if you say that he's a bar chiyuva shaper meiser. V'ila bar chiyuvahu nifter b'minyan haroi. Diyomer Rabbi minyan haroi poiter. As again we said, the ones that pass through are potter here when an animal dies. So to here, he fulfilled the mitzvah, since if it's the animal that was counted, then it's potter. Okay, let's continue to Zayin with Aleph. Elamais lachem emar. What do you want to tell me? Says Rashi, Lama lo chivuhu aser b'manavshach. Why are you not chayav to do ma'aser behema manavshach? Asiri vani amrachman v'asiri safek. which is really what question 2 is. Since we count this animal, since there's no suffix that it may belong to a Kohen, no, it is for sure the Israel's, so he can do Ma'aseh Behema, and it is a proof. What does that mean, sfekos? So we already established this, but the Gemara says, it has to be something which becomes kadosh through pidyon, through the it has to be something which becomes kadosh, but not something which was already kadosh, which again, as we said before, is kadosh merechem. El savik pidyon peter chamor, which is what we established over there. You could have nach when Rav Rabba Buravu Yisrael sheishlo asara savik petiri chamor. Rashi said this: if you have 10 animals which are peter chamor, betoch beito mafresh alehen asara sayin umasrin behin shalo. Then you could separate all 10. And then you can put them all 10 together, and then you do the Ma'aseh Behema, the Hein Shlo, and then they are yours. Okay. So let's continue. Why not? My Havila the Mesusa. What is the din of this bathhouse? So what is the din of this bathhouse? So Tashma, Diyam Rav Chia bar Rav, and again, he was makdashit. So what's the din? Diyam Rav Chia bar Rav and Havi Uvda Bei Rav Chista. There was a story of Rav Chista Bei Rav Huna, Upashta Mahadiyam Rav Nachman, and he answered in the following way. He said like this: Kol Maman Sheinu Yochel Heitziu B'Dayanim. Any money that cannot be taken out with judges, Hekdishu Enu Kadosh. So in that situation, if you're makdashit, it does not work. Baha Yochel Heitziu B'Dayanim, which is mashma, if you do have a situation where it can be taken out from Dayanim, Hekdishu Kadosh. It could be makdashit afagav doloi afge, even though it was not taken from the other person. Says Rashi, Shin Yochel Heitzio, V'hainami dechazinule, the Ein Yochel Heitzio b'Dayanim. The Dayanim can't take this bathhouse away. She'ein lo raya b'davar. There's no proof. Ein Hekdishu Kadosh. So then you cannot be makdashit. So we're saying, so what does that mean? That's what we're saying by the Mesusa. So what's the opposite? It's mashma that if Beis Din could take it away, then you taka could be makdash even though it's still in the other person's hands. The Yom Rabbi Yochanan Gazal and Yeshua Baalim. If let's say someone stole but there was no Yesh Baalim, so Shnei Meni Yochon Hakdisho, you can't be makdash Zel Lefishenu Shulav Zel Lefishenu Rishuso, which is what we said. The whole point. If it was not in your Rishus, you shouldn't be able to be makdash it. Says Rashi, V'Hastam Gazela Yochon Hoitze B'Dayanamu. A situation of Gazela, judges can take that away. So, mi sarit b'masusa metaltal naskinan. You think we're talking about a bathhouse which is metaltal and like a gigas, like a jug or like a barrel? B'masusa mikarkoyas kinan. We're talking about land. The chiyachol haitzia b'dayanim b'reshus kaima. So that when the Beis Din takes it out, it's still in his reshus. So it would be kadosh since the karka is. Since it is karka, it is in his reshus. We're going to stop there, but let's look at this Rashi. Mekarkoi the chol hecha deisi b'reshus marikaima, the karka in exelis. So it's not considered to be stealing. So therefore, we're talking about a case of a masusa, which is karka. If it's a masusa of karka, so then the din is that it's in exelis, and therefore you should be able to makdash it because it's not considered by enu b'reshuso. That's only by metaltalin. Okay. Let's see question 3, possibly. Yeah. Mamon shiachol haitzu b'dayanim. If you have money which can be taken from dayanim, dekdishu b'habayis im dekdishu kadosh. So b'metaltalin enu kadosh kivan she'enu b'reshuso. That's what we said. That since it's not in your reshus, so you cannot be you can't be makdash it because lefi she'enu b'reshuso. However, karka dekdishu hektish. If the Beis Din does take it away, it's considered like it's still in your reshus because it karkas in an exelis. Okay, so therefore, in case of Masusa, taka makes sense that that's the reason why the rabbis distanced themselves from their parshmine, is because they were concerned that taka was an issue. Question TA 22. Maharaya, what's the proof the takvu kayin moitzin miyadai, that when the kayin grabs hold onto it, that we take it away. It says me'eza mishnah v'ketzad harayim misham. What exactly is the proof? TA 22. He says we went out mehasfekos nichnasel adir lesaser. We see when it comes to this case of the peter pidyon peter chamor, we say v'loy chashiv paiter atzmum b'mamin kayin. We say that you could actually use this pidyon peter chamor. It's a suffix, and you can use it as part of the meiser behema. But how could you do it if the kohen actually has some koyach? So it must be that the kohen does not have any koyach over it, and therefore it's a raya that takva kohen is moitzim miyadai. Because if you ain't moitzim miyado, then you should not be able to use this animal pidyon peter chamor to pater meiser behema, because you're using the lashon nimsa zeh pater moino b'mamoino shel kohen. So therefore, that's the reason why it's a raya, as we're trying to establish, that takva kayin moitzin miyadai. Okay, TB 23. Maharaya shemir gemara the takva kayin moitzin miyado behema nichnas adir sasil inin meiser behema. Wish I wrote a little more than that. That's correct. Adkan.